So if you're a Michael Jackson fan, today's episode will make you not only sad, but really, really angry. What you're also gonna find out is that all of our previous episodes are deeply connected. And today, you're finally gonna see the big picture. And this picture ain't pretty, yo. In today's video, I'm going to reveal some very rarely seen footage of MJ, as well as expose the deep hidden meanings beneath his lyrics and music videos. What you'll find out is that Michael Jackson is one of the bravest people you have ever seen. First, I need to say that everything I'm about to say herein is pure speculation. Although a lot of it is based on fact, it's not meant to be taken as truth, yo.
It's true.
Also, everything I'm about to say herein is not meant to defame anyone. This is all purely an expression of my creative freedom. So please, 不要告我咯. So, with that out of the way, allow us to begin our journey and completely re-understand the amazing figure and picture that is Michael Jackson. So before we get into my conspiracy theory, you must first understand three things: Michael Jackson's background, the political climate of America at that time, and most importantly, what Michael Jackson expressed in his lyrics. And only then can you see the big picture very clearly. Now, if you ask me, the musical world is divided into two parts: BM and AM. That's before Michael and after Michael. You see, Michael Jackson was the only person in the world who could bring everyone together, regardless of religion, racial background, language, where you lived, your age, all this. He could bring people together through his music. Real talk, MJ was the closest person to becoming king of the world, and he did all of this before the internet. Even till this day, most modern music doesn't even compare to Michael Jackson's legacy, dude. You see, MJ had a superpower, and as long as he used his superpower in his art, he was all good. He was safe. But the moment he started to use that superpower to send messages and start to touch politics, that's when he became very dangerous. Dangerous. Now you might say,
哦，唢呐 ，Michael Jackson 只会唱歌跟跳舞而已吧？他偶尔讲一点点 world peace 而已啊，他哪里有讲政治的东西呢？
This is actually a very normal question. That's because you were completely dazzled by his amazing dance moves and his magical tunes, so you didn't have time to really pay attention to the message he was trying to convey. But 1991 was the year when Michael's music became blatantly political, and his influence was so huge at that time that he began to make a lot of political groups worry. A lot. Because at that time, Michael Jackson released one of his classic songs, Black or White. It's black, it's white, it's and this song was kind of like the musical version of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, both aiming to encourage racial harmony and social equality. There's also one other thing you need to know. In 1991, America was having some very serious problems with racial discrimination and police brutality. I know this shit because I lived it. And also at that time, American society was very different. It was a lot more conservative and a lot more right-leaning. Now, in modern times, Michael's song would be considered run-of-the-mill and standard SOP. But back then, this song was 超级政治不正确咯。
但是只是他的歌词有一点怪怪而已吧，没有那么严重，对吧？
很严重欸, because it wasn't so much his song as it was the music video, and this was going to be very dangerous. You see, the first part of the Black or White music video was lighthearted and fun and very positive. Then we got to that second half where things got a little bit dark. Once the music ended, you saw a Black Panther creeping down a dark alley. And ultimately, that Black Panther transformed into Michael Jackson. That's when my man started dancing solo, and he started smashing things and screaming. And every time he screamed, you heard the roar of the Black Panther. My man was straight up wilding out. And in the end, Michael turned back into the Black Panther and bounced. If you've seen our previous episodes, then you already understand what the Black Panther represents in American society. I ain't talking about no Marvel shit, yo. We're talking about the Black Panther Party. FBI 最大的敌人. The Black Panther Party righteously pursued the equal human rights for Black people, the elimination of racial discrimination, and the end to police brutality against Black people. They were willing to achieve this by any means necessary, including using violence. Now don't get it twisted. Michael Jackson did not have any direct connection with the Black Panther Party. There's one thing you need to understand. 1969 was the year that the Black Panthers had peak influence in society. It was also the year that Michael Jackson was 11 years old, just 2 years shy of puberty. So I think it's safe to say that him witnessing this in real time, he most likely was influenced by the Black Panthers. And Michael used a symbol of the Black Panthers in his music video. The Panther changed into him, and he wilded out, smashing and using violence to convey his message. Not only that, but when this music video premiered, it broke records, dude. Over 50 million people tuned in to watch this music video. That's over 1/5 of the US population at the time. Needless to say, my man, the 影響力超大. And just 5 months later, guess what happened? 1992, the LA riots kicked off. Blacks and whites were wilding out, smashing anything in their path, just like Michael Jackson in his black or white music video. Let me ask you a question. If you're the FBI and you're watching on live television, people in LA wilding out and smashing things left and right, and then just 5 months earlier, you remember that Michael Jackson had a music video of him doing the exact same thing, wilding out and smashing things left and right, doing something so controversial in mainstream media, what would you do? Take him out? Nah, because that would make him a martyr, like Martin Luther King. Best thing you can do is destroy his reputation. But how exactly do you do that? So how do you destroy a leader's influence? Give them a scandal. The worse, the better. And in the early 1990s, that meant PDP. Now, for those of you who don't know what PDP means, just think 国一国二 还没满18岁那种. So, let's go down the timeline. In November 1991, Michael Jackson released his controversial black or white music video with all the Black Panther references you can think of. Then, in April 1992, the LA riots went down. Then, fast forward to August 1993, Michael Jackson catches his first PDP charge. Now, we all know that these PDP charges had a huge effect on Michael Jackson's reputation. Even till this day, there are people who really believe that he did something to those kids. This was the first step in destroying Michael Jackson's influence. And in court, they found absolutely no evidence to support any of the claims. And when one of the victims described a body part of Michael Jackson, upon careful and close examination, they found that it was completely different. It did not match at all. But still, to this day, people are still making documentaries to smear this fool. Now, if you ask me, Michael Jackson didn't do anything to no kids, yo. How do I know? Because for 10 years, the FBI investigated this fool. They raided his Neverland Ranch twice and filed a 600-page report, which pretty much concluded that they had nothing. In fact, what they did find was a lot of people trying to extort this fool for money, and even a couple of death threats. Even after Michael died, they searched all of his residencies, and they still came up empty-handed. Nothing related to any children doing any weird stuff. Let's be real, nearly all PDP offenders keep some sort of memento. Some photos, some videos, or a couple of text messages even, maybe even some books. So you'd think if the FBI had found even just a little bit of evidence on their public enemy number one, a leader in the black community, they would come forth with it, right? Now, some of you might be thinking,
阿唢呐，你只是不喜欢 FBI 而已，他们怎么可以做这么糟糕的事情呢？
hey, 我跟你讲吼, the FBI has a very long history of fuckery. Don't believe me? Ask Martin Luther King. The FBI publicly admitted and apologized for launching a special operation to defame and smear Martin Luther King, to compromise this fool. They tapped his phones, secretly recorded him, and even made several attempts to convince this fool to unalive himself. This special operation, they tried everything they could to divide the black community and slander this dude. Michael Jackson's influence was something far beyond Martin Luther King Jr.'s, dude. If the FBI found even a tiny bit of evidence of PDP on his part, rest assured, they would have come forth with it.
It's true.
So if you ask me, at this point alone, my man didn't do no weird stuff with no kids, dude. He was just trying to reconnect with his lost childhood. Because if you understand his past, you know that his father was very abusive. Him and his brothers practically had zero childhood. Michael Jackson's anger can be seen very clearly when he expresses it in 1995's music video, They Don't Care About Us. Now, this music video has two versions, and I highly recommend you watch the prison version, because in it, you see some footage of police brutality, a little bit of the LA riots, even some 6.4事件 footage in there as well. You have to know, at that time, US-China relations were just barely normalizing. President Jiang Zemin was about to visit the US for the very first time. To have a 超级政治不正确 MV from Michael Jackson at that time was really bad look for the US, yo. Just check out this part where he said, here, my man is laying it out all clear. He's saying, hey, I'm trying to expose the police brutality and racial discrimination here. But clearly, you don't care about us. When I talk about these things, you threaten me, you send people out to get me, to sue me, and even try to throw me in jail. So, in black or white, he alluded to the Black Panther Party, and In this one, he's talking about Martin Luther King. And you need to know, every lyric of They Don't Care About Us and Black or White were written by Michael Jackson himself, as he loved to exercise complete creative control over his productions. So if you see this and you think that Michael Jackson was just the king of pop who loved doing the moonwalk, you are dead wrong, yo. He was way more than that. My man was a straight up civil rights leader, and he wanted to convey the messages of the Black Panther Party along with Martin Luther King's message as well. He wanted to bring this stuff to the forefront in modern day. And although Clinton, a Democrat, was in office, the Senate and the House were both controlled by the Republicans. This is also a period of time when the American military-industrial complex was in full effect. We were already knee-deep in 2 conflicts at the time. As you can see, Michael Jackson was the king of 政治不正确. What you know so far, now you can start to understand why someone want to hurl PDP accusations at him, or even attack his vitiligo disease and say that he didn't want to be black anymore, that he was trying to be white, and that's why he bleached his skin. All of this to destroy his reputation in the black community, just because Michael Jackson wanted to have a positive influence on society and make the world a better place. This idea made Michael very dangerous, but it was nothing compared to what he was about to do next, something that would make him one of the most dangerous men in the United States, the History World Tour. 1995, the year that Michael Jackson started his world tour. And I envy anyone who was able to attend any of these concerts, yo. The History Tour lasted 2 whole years, 35 countries, and 82 separate concerts. And here, Michael Jackson cleverly used the word history by capitalizing the first 3 letters to make it his story. Almost like he was saying that his story would soon become history. It's almost as if he was implying to the world that what he was doing was very dangerous, and at any moment in time, he could be completely removed. Don't believe me? Just check his lyrics. So here, he is very clearly saying that no matter what they throw at him, be it the vitiligo thing or the PDP charges, that he has to get his message across to the world. But the most important part was this. The History Tour, Michael's outfit was like a warrior, a soldier. And when he sang They Don't Care About Us, you can see that halfway through the song, the lyrics suddenly run out, and then from his story, he takes out the American flag. Everyone salutes the flag like they're in a cult. So to me, what I see is a man publicly mocking American imperialism. Michael Jackson has already made his political stance very clear. Whereas before he was opposing police brutality, now he was outright opposing and ridiculing American foreign policy. And he was rubbing their faces all in it. So imagine this, one of the most influential people in the entire world, America's greatest export, is now publicly mocking and opposing Americans' government policies for 2 years in a row. He'd done the Black Panther thing in the music video, and then went so far as to say that the government doesn't even give a crap about its own people. So I'm wondering, would the OSS, aka the Deep State, or maybe the Illuminati support this kind of thing?
No.
So with that, now you can understand why the last part of his story says, because he was very well aware that what he was doing was very dangerous. The end of his story could result in the warrior being killed. And that warrior was Michael Jackson. Coincidentally, this is just around the time when Michael Jackson would start to have some very big conflicts with his label, Sony Music. In the next part of the story, you will see a very familiar face and name rear his ugly head. 1996, the year when Michael Jackson would have some very serious beef with his record company, Sony Music Entertainment, and it would go on for a long time. Now, Michael Jackson wasn't one to speak on public conflicts as he was under contract with them at the time. But come 2002, he sung a very different tune.
First, let me say, I really don't like to talk that much. I prefer to perform than talk, but these guys work really hard at their craft, but the story ends the same. They usually are broken, torn, and usually just sad because the companies take advantage of them. At Sony, I generated several $1 billion for Sony. They really thought that my mind is always on music and dancing, and they never thought that this performer, myself, would outthink them.
Yeah!
So I'm leaving Sony a free agent, owning half of Sony. They're very angry at me because I just did good business, you know? And Tommy Mottola is a devil. I'm not supposed to say what I'm gonna say right now, but I have to let you in on a secret. Please don't videotape what I'm going to say, okay? Know what? I don't mind. Tape it. Mariah Carey came to me crying. She was crying so badly I had to hold her. She said to me that this is an evil man. And Michael, this man follows me, she said. He taps her phones. And he's very, very evil, and she doesn't trust him. And he is a horrible human being. And we have to continue our drive until he's terminated.
Oh! Did you see that sign he was holding up at the beginning? It read, Sony kills. Now, common sense would tell you that it means that Sony probably kills the creativity and the spirit of its artists by pressuring them to do more things that they don't want to do, but some people interpreted this literally. Now, it all depends on whether or not you're looking at this through your conspiracy theory glasses, which I lost mine, but I can still see shit very clearly, yo. But to sum up this whole speech, my man is saying that there was someone who was very evil at Sony, who was willing to do stuff like eavesdrop on folks' conversations and even threatening folks. If you remember how Diddy treated Cassie, I think it's safe to say that tapping folks' phones was the only thing that Michael Jackson was willing to publicly expose. There's a lot that he didn't say, because if it was just eavesdropping on folks' conversations, then why was Mariah Carey crying so badly? Why would she use the word evil to describe this person? That reminds me, do you remember what Suge Knight said?
When that happens in the industry, what's done to them, they do to the next person.
So based on what we see in this footage, I think the message that Michael Jackson was trying to tell us is that the CEO of Sony at that time was into some borderline evil Diddy shit. And Michael was trying to use his influence to help Mariah Carey. Here is a very fun fact. Michael Jackson was one of the few, and I mean very few people, to actually own the copyright of their recordings. And you have to understand that this is virtually unheard of, especially at that time, because usually the record label owns the rights to recordings. That means they have the exclusive right to negotiate, exploit, and even reproduce all of the songs created by the artists without giving them a single penny. This is why, just a few years ago, Taylor Swift resorted to reproducing all of her own songs on her dime so that she could own the new copyright. Because without going to such extremes, that means the fruits of your labor completely belong to somebody else. In the end, you get practically nothing. Now, Michael Jackson did something virtually unheard of. He not only bought the copyrights to his music, he bought the entire publishing company that owned his rights, the Beatles, and many other artists. But here's where he made a mistake. He took his new publishing company and merged it with Sony, which means that Sony now owned half of all the copyrights to his music. This is a very important point. Remember this, because we'll explain a little bit later. And another thing, when Sony signed a multi-million-dollar deal with Michael Jackson back in 1991, they immediately took out a $17.5 million life insurance policy on this fool, with them being the beneficiary. Now, this was meant to recoup any losses that might be incurred as a result of Michael Jackson maybe disappearing, or falling ill, or even worse, dying. Now, it might sound weird, but this is actually common practice in the music business. So let's sum this all up. When it comes to a typical artist signing to a record company, they not only own all the copyrights to their music, but if they die, they can take out a life insurance policy and continue to profit on their music into perpetuity. And upon Michael Jackson's death, Sony did cash in on that insurance policy, yo. With that, now we can listen to what he said next.
Throughout the years, black artists have been taken advantage of. The record companies really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists.
Now, do you notice how he said these record companies specifically target black artists? And you see that sign that says no justice, no peace? Fun fact, this term was actually coined in 1986 from the black community as a result of the influence from the Black Panthers. The main idea, they would be willing to exchange peace for justice. Now, you have to remember that at the time of this press conference, Michael Jackson had already left Sony. He had his own record company, and his influence was arguably more powerful than the US president himself. So if you're the FBI, an organization in charge of maintaining US domestic security, when someone like this appears, you have to be very careful. So towards the end of 2002, Michael's war with major record companies was about to reach its ultimate climax. You remember that guy, clivedavis, we talked about in our previous episode? His relationship with Whitney Houston? In case you missed it, he was the guy who we speculated was in charge of getting Whitney Houston hooked on drugs. He was also the one that when Whitney Houston died downstairs, he carried on his pre-Grammy party upstairs.
The Grammys were the next night. You don't cancel.
Also, he's the guy who mentored and created Diddy. Well, from 2002 to 2008, Clive served as the chief creative officer to Sony Music. That meant he was in charge of artist management, he was in charge of artist tours, the creative direction of their albums, and most importantly, organizing their concerts. Fun fact, Clive Davis is the very guy who gave Michael Jackson his solo career back in 1978 when he offered him his first major record label deal. Now, Clive Davis was very familiar and very friendly with one of the world's largest concert and live event companies, AEG Live. This is the company that helped Clive put on his famous pre-Grammy Award show galas, the very gala that Clive proceeded to continue with 4 hours after Whitney Houston died. Not only that, but Whitney Houston's very public funeral was hosted at an AEG Live venue. Clive Davis also happened to be the guest main speaker. Needless to say, Clive Davis and AEG were like this, son. And soon after Michael left Sony, it was AEG Live who introduced his private nurse to him. And it was this private nurse who introduced the man who would ultimately kill him, Conrad Murray. Now, Michael met Conrad Murray back in Vegas in 2006, and Conrad came highly recommended by Michael's private nurse, who was also an employee of AEG Live. Everything that's about to follow happened in the second year that Clive Davis would serve as the chief creative officer for Sony Music Entertainment. And do you remember what Kanye West said?
This is all mind control. And they wanted to medicate me every day. You realize, like, they could have just switched to medication and I wouldn't be here. And on the news, they would have said it was because of a mental issue.
So, 2009, Michael Jackson is now 50 years old, and he makes a very special announcement. He's about to launch his final tour called This Is It. Now, the phrase, this is it, is usually something the main character in the movie utters when they're about to die. It literally means this is the end. And to help him put on this massive tour, there were only two companies involved. The first was AEG Live, the same company that Clive Davis had a special relationship with. And the second,
wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, wait for it,
Sony Music Entertainment. They were in charge of filming and distributing his documentary, as well as putting out a compilation album. So how in the world would Sony Music Entertainment, Michael Jackson's biggest enemy, a company who he criticized and publicly ridiculed for years, be involved with this? Remember what I said before, they own 50% of all his copyright, which meant Michael Jackson had no choice. They had to be involved, just like a shareholder in a company. Who was the person who negotiated and scheduled this tour on his behalf? Clive Davis.
Fuck.
So, Michael Jackson had no choice. He had to cooperate with his biggest enemy. Why? Because between the PDP lawsuit fees, his excessive spending on Neverland Ranch, his constant donations, and the fact that he bought the copyright to his own music meant that he was very knee-deep in debt, yo. His back was against a very hard wall. And at this time, Clive Davis did something very smart. On Sony's behalf, he paid $60 million to Michael Jackson and AEG for the filming and distribution rights of the documentary for This Is It. This is very important, so stick a pin in that and keep this for later. Now, at the early stages of preparing for this concert, Michael Jackson was already burnt out, and he was resorting to prescription drugs to keep him going and help him sleep, which is part of the reason why he needed to find a doctor who could prescribe him with the stuff that he needed. Not just any doctor. He needed someone who he could control, someone who was willing to do things that maybe they necessarily shouldn't do. Someone like Conrad Murray, who would prescribe him propofol to help him get to sleep, a drug that many respectable doctors would refuse to use. Now here is where things get strange. Before Conrad Murray met Michael Jackson, he was in some very serious trouble. He was having financial hardship, he was about to file for bankruptcy, and most importantly, he was under investigation in several states for violating the doctor's code of ethics. Needless to say, he would probably be the last person a very rich and powerful person would want on their payroll. But for some weird, mysterious reason, this investigation into the doctor was delayed for a very long time. And ultimately, he was never stripped of his license to practice medically.
That doesn't make any sense.
How could someone so sketchy have the opportunity to get so close and personal with someone like Michael Jackson? 这个很奇怪呢. Now, although AEG came out later and said that they opposed to Michael using the doctor, the man who was tasked with Michael's very well-being, Clive Davis, didn't do a single thing to stop it. We already know the story that follows. At the very irresponsible hands of Conrad Murray, Michael Jackson would leave this world. And after everything you've seen thus far, you already know that Michael Jackson was very dangerous to the FBI. And you already understand the very strained relationship between Sony Music Entertainment and Michael Jackson. And if you've been following every episode in this series, then you already understand what kind of person Clive Davis is. So now, let's get to the conspiracy theory.
Hold on to your butts.
首先，我要说 that everything I'm about to say in here is pure speculation. science fiction, conspiracy theory, yo. What I'm about to say is not meant to defame or slander any individual or any company. So please do not sue my ass, dog. Alright, so the following is my 超级有可能 conspiracy theory. Michael Jackson's influence was undeniable. He was the biggest leader in the black community since Dr. Martin Luther King and the Black Panther Party. He single-handedly spread a positive message of black people, especially black men, to people all over the world. Also inspired people to resist against American imperialism, as well as fight against social injustice, racial discrimination, police brutality, and all other sorts of injustices as well. At the time, Michael Jackson's influence was greater than the US president himself, which put Michael Jackson at #1 on FBI's shit list. He was the government's biggest threat. And when 1991 rolled around and he released the world record-breaking black and white music video, which showed all the Black Panther stuff, and all the violence against social and racial injustice, possibly leading and inspiring the 1992 LA riots, this is when the FBI decided to take action. They found someone with a child who was very, very close to Michael that claimed that Michael Jackson had done some PDP shit. Which, fun fact, shortly after Michael Jackson's death, that person mysteriously unalived themselves. Now, following these allegations, the US government used the power of the mainstream media to defame, ridicule, and completely reduce Michael Jackson's public influence. And in just about 10 years, Michael Jackson's influence, his fame, and his money were all the way downhill. Mission accomplished. And then, in 2002, when Michael left Sony Music and began to publicly criticize and expose the company, they sent in the big guns, the OG, Clive Davis, the handler, the man who gave Michael Jackson his career many, many years before. And Clive Davis connected him to AEG. AEG then connected him to his private nurse, who then connected him to Conrad Murray, the guy who was full of scandal, investigations, and somehow managed to avoid all of it and eventually infiltrate Michael Jackson's inner circle, ultimately becoming the man who would take down Michael Jackson on the FBI's behalf. And when Michael Jackson announced his final world tour, the FBI suddenly recalled all that crazy stuff he did whenever he publicly ridiculed the government years back with a history tour. And they decided not to take any risks. They were going to take action this time. So, with the aid of Clive Davis, they were about to execute their ultimate plan to put Michael Jackson to sleep forever. So Conrad Murray intentionally overdosed Michael Jackson with propofol. Then he claimed that it was Michael Jackson who wanted it in the first place. Now, in a very strange interview, a reporter asked Conrad Murray why, after Michael Jackson fell asleep, did he make a 45-minute phone call to his girlfriend and not notify the police or call 911 first? And what this man said will blow your mind.
You didn't call 911.
I did not call 911.
You called his assistant.
Yes.
To call security. Yes. This is a vital time. You're the medical practitioner, you know 911, call emergency is your first port of call, isn't it?
The first port of call for a lay person is to call 911. They're calling for a skilled person. I am a specialist. I have the skill. I can start immediately. If you can do CPR as early as possible, that's great. But I don't know how long Michael was down.
So you didn't think you needed to call 911?
No, I'm not saying I don't need. I needed help. I needed help for sure.
Well,
but
911's your help.
So to me, Conrad Murray was just buying time to make sure that Michael Jackson was not going to wake up. And through his ex-girlfriend, he was able to get word to Clive Davis that the mission had been complete. Michael Jackson was gone for good. What was Conrad Murray's fate? My man spent 2 years in jail, yo. Then, when he got out, he fled to Trinidad and Tobago and became mysteriously debt-free. And his current net worth? $500,000. Oh, and that $60 million that Clive Davis spent on Sony's behalf to obtain the filming and distribution rights to the This Is It documentary, well, less than 1 year after Michael Jackson went to sleep forever, they made a profit of over $1 billion. More than 16 times their initial investment. If you've been following this series, you already know where we stand. Artists make more money after they're dead. From Biggie to Whitney Houston, now to Michael Jackson. Now this year, on June 25th, marks the 15-year anniversary of Michael Jackson's passing. And just a few months ago in February, Sony Music Entertainment acquired the copyrights of all of Michael Jackson's songs for just $600 million, literally half of what it's worth.
I have to be honest, I didn't believe it. I said, Michael, come on, you're Michael Jackson. Who in the world would do this? Nobody would try to kill you. I mean, it would be world news and everybody would know about it. They're not going to do it. But he was so passionate and adamant about it and says, you don't understand. It's all about my catalog. This is what they want, and this is what they're going to do. And he was terrified.
And I'm willing to guess there will very soon be an announcement that Sony Music will release a commemorative album to celebrate Michael Jackson's musical achievements and his life. All to be released on June 25th. So, here we are with yet another story that has no happy ending. Just to be clear, this is all yo couldn't know. Everything I'm saying is fiction, yo.
It's true.
Now, if this is too much for you to bear, maybe lighten the mood and go listen to some Michael Jackson songs. But this time, don't be distracted by his singing and dancing, yo. Listen to the message he is trying to tell you. Because Michael Jackson was a genius, stronger and braver than anyone you've ever known. So, go check out his songs and look for all the hidden messages he left behind. Also, let us know what artist story you want us to reveal next. But before you do that, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video, and I will see you on the flip side. Peace!